What am I to do?
Welcome to He Said, She Said Razor Branding Podcast with Michael Russo and Jaci Russo. To learn more about how to improve your brand, visit brandRUSSO.com.
He's the cutest.
That was great.
All
Yeah,
right,
exactly
you
what I thought he'd be. Insightful, smart,
Yes.
and yeah, just
all the
yeah.
things.
and just a nice person.
Yes. That's it. That's the intro.
Yeah. No, and I mean, we both love the restaurant business. Like I said, I always said if I could run away to the circus, it would be to build Mardi Gras floats with Blaine Kern or to just go back into the restaurant business because I loved it. I loved the pace, the immediate gratification that and talk about success. We talk about a lot of success during this call, which I thought was really good, insightful. But like in the restaurant business, you can judge your success by every table. Every 5 minutes you get, you know immediately how that experience went. You open the door and you close the door. And that's what's really hard with business, I think, is long-term success because, you don't get to have that, where does it end? Where is that level? And it's a moving target sometimes, I think. Maybe.
What I think they do really well, though, is it appears, having been in multiple of their restaurants and in their training center and talking to them, they've removed a lot of the chaos and confusion that always made me crazy in the restaurant industry. They run it like a business.
I think they probably still have the crazy and the confusion. Sorry, my headphones are dying.
I thought you were sticking the cord actually in your ear, and I was very confused about what was about to happen.
No, we're just gonna pretend like none of this happened. If you're listening to this, going into this, he's a restaurateur, businessman, but his marketing insight is brilliant. The way he understands brands without even being a brander, like he understands what branding is. Trust me. You go to his places and you're connected on an emotional level from the minute you walk in to the minute you leave, and that is infectious. And I think everybody can learn a lot from his wisdom and his insight.
Yeah, absolutely. So y'all stick around and listen to these pearls of wisdom that Ari has for us.
All right, good. Thank
Yay,
you.
he was a great guest. Welcome, Ari. We're so glad you're here.
I'm glad to be here too.
So for the people who are listening, who may not know who you are, how we met, I thought maybe we'd kind of start with a real quick that we had the pleasure of attending the 21 Hats annual conference in Ann Arbor and dine at a couple of your different restaurants, spend some days in your training center. So maybe, if you don't mind, you can kind of start off with the entire Zingerman community of businesses and what that is and how that works.
Okay. You want the backstory too, or just what?
Oh, yes, please. I want it all.
You want it all. Okay.
I do.
Let's see. Rebecca Solnit, the writer, says, trying to decide where a story begins is like dipping a cup in the ocean. So there's 1,000 places you could start this story. But I'm going to start it for me when I came to Ann Arbor from where I grew up in Chicago, about 4 hours drive to the west of Ann Arbor. And I attended University of Michigan, where I got a degree in Russian history, very important major and a painful one over the last few years. And also studied anarchism quite a bit, which is not a widely known academic fact, but the university has one of the best anarchist collections in the world here at the University Graduate Library. So I just go up there and study, and I've gone back up as a business owner quite a bit too. But anyway, after graduating with my history degree, there isn't really anything one can do with a history degree except go get appropriately aligned more degrees, which is what I was supposed to do. I didn't know what those were. When I graduated, as you know, we do a lot with visioning. It's sort of what drew 21 Hats to us in Ann Arbor in the first place. But when I graduated, I had no vision at all, only what David Whyte, W-H-Y-T-E, the poet and writer whose books I would highly recommend, calls the via negativa. This is something you might have experienced, but don't have that term, which is that it's where you're clueless about where you really want to go, but you're really, really clear where you don't want to go. So I don't really recommend it, but it's better than nothing because at least you could eliminate some of the options. And I was very clear I did not want to go home. In order to not go home, I knew I needed a job. I didn't have any business background, but I understand how money works. And I had driven a taxi part-time while I was in school, which was fine, but not that interesting. One of my college roommates was waiting tables at a restaurant in downtown Ann Arbor. For those who haven't been here, the whole town's only about 100,000 people, so 15 minutes from one end to the other, unless it's our rush quarter hour. And I applied for the same job he had as a waiter. It seemed like what a good job. I don't know. I didn't know anything about it, but he seemed to like it, and money seemed all right. So they interviewed me. We had a nice conversation. They said they'd call, but after like 2 weeks, I hadn't heard anything. So my anxiety was going up. I said, all right, I'm going to go back. I'll reapply as a busboy. And then, if I do good work, they'll promote me. So once again, nice conversation. Once again, they said they'd call. Once again, another couple of weeks, no call. Meanwhile, of course, do the math. Rent is coming due. And my anxiety is getting really high. So I went back a third time, which I now know is called emotional resilience. And I reapplied and I said I would do anything. And they said, do you want to wash dishes? And never having worked in food before, I didn't know you weren't really supposed to want to wash dishes. So I was like, yeah, dude, I'll wash dishes. Great. And they said, awesome. Can you start tomorrow? And I was like, hugely relieved. So I just said yes. So I did. So I'd love to tell you this glamorous story about how from the time I was 10 that I loved food and cooking, and my mom was this incredible cook, and most of our recipes come from her work, but none of that is true. My mother was a good person and a teacher, but not a good cook. I grew up on Kraft macaroni and cheese, Mrs. Paul's fish sticks, Pop-Tarts, Tang, and other exciting mid-20th century industrial offerings that are detailed in the pamphlet I did on food philosophy. And I really had no business background at all either. I didn't even know it was on the life career menu, because most of my family were teachers, doctors, lawyers, dentists, psychologists. So business seemed like General Motors, and I really didn't have any clue. So I really just lucked out. Paul Goodman, the anarchist philosopher, teacher, educator, mid-20th century, he said that having a vocation is like falling in love, and it works out. And everybody listening to this, me included, has fallen in love many times, not just with people, but ideas, projects, philosophies, whatever. And then it doesn't work out. And far more of them don't work out than do work out. That's not a cut. It's just the reality. But I lucked out because I fell in love with food and the food world. And also I met great people. So my business partner of now, 43 years, Paul Saginaw, was the general manager. It was his first day, was my first day. So that's how we met. Frank Carollo, who pretty quickly after I started training me how to prep and then be a line cook, was a line cook. And then the following year, Maggie Bayless, who later became the partner at Zing, our training business, where I'm actually sitting right now, started as a cocktail waitress. So I don't know, man. It's almost half a century and we still like each other. So that I started prepping and line cooking. I have a new little chapbook called Life Lessons I Learned from Being a Line Cook that came out a few months ago. Paul stayed about 2 years and left and opened a little fish market here in town. It's still one of the best in the country. I kept working and started managing. And I don't know, after about 4 years there, I reached a point that I'm sure many people listening will have experienced at various spots in their life history. And that's where I didn't hate going to work, and it wasn't like a bad job. It was perfectly fine, and the pay was fine, and the people were pleasant, but it just was less and less sort of inspiring. And I could sense that where they were headed, even though they didn't write a vision the way we do, was not where I wanted to head. So November 1, 1981, now ancient history, closer to World War II than to today, I gave 2 months notice, not knowing what was going to be next, but it was just time to get out of there. And in one of those nice life stories that really worked out, Paul called me like 2 days later to say, dude, this little building's coming open near the fish market. Let's go check it out. And he had grown up in Detroit where you could get good deli food. And in Chicago, where I grew up, you could, but you couldn't get it here. So that was one of the ideas we had bounced around together as people, as you know, in the food world are wont to do, discuss their own ideas of their own business. Most never happen, but ours did. So within about a week, we decided we would open. I don't know how we went this fast, because now it takes like 6 months to get a meeting set up. But 4.5 months later, we had renovated the whole space, made the menu, costed the menu, and, got the food in and set it all up. And we opened on March 15th, 1982. It's just me and Paul, 2 employees, 1,300 square feet, 25 sandwiches on the menu, all the old Jewish stuff he and I had both grown up with in our respective hometowns, and then a little bit of what's now known as specialty food, but at that time was mostly just considered strange or weird because nobody ever heard of extra virgin olive oil. And that's it. That's how we got going. And then fast forwarding to answer your question more directly, 43 years later, all our businesses are here in the Ann Arbor area. We could talk about why that is if you want later. But we have, I don't know, depends how you count, about a dozen of them. About 700 people work in the organization. We'll do over 80 million in sales collectively. About 300 of the staff members own a share in the business. And there's lots more to say, but that's not that short of an intro, but it's an intro.
No,
That's
it's
a great
awesome.
intro.
Well, and I just for any listeners, when we met you, we were having dinner at one of your restaurants, and which was amazing, by the way, and great. But there was this guy walking around pouring waters, and I was like, "Oh, hey, guys, pouring waters, just part of the team, the service team." And everybody at my table was like, "Is that really him? Is that really him?" And I'm like, "Okay, am I missing something?" Now Jaci would know because she reads a lot and she's familiar with things. I'm not much of a marketing guy, but they were all marketing people or business people, and they were huge followers of yours, and you were the guy pouring water. And I was like, okay, let me figure out what's going on here. I looked over on the table. There was a stack of, I don't know, 20, 30 books there, and all written by you, and they're all business books and relating to life in the service industry and all these different concepts. And then you talk to us. And anyway, I'm a fan all of a sudden. Jaci walked away with us. She bought every book you had, I think, pretty much.
I did.
I appreciate it.
So it's part of her library now as well, and mine. But no, it was just an interesting way to kind of to figure all that out. And we are both big fans of the service industry. We've talked about that when we were up there, that we even try to hire people. They go to the top of the list if they worked in the restaurant business, because we both did in college and after. And there's so many lessons to learn there. And I think you've done such a good job of incorporating the service side of things and how to understand your customers and how to provide them with quality service. And there were so many tidbits that you provided over the couple of days that we spent with you that really still resonate with both of us. So anyway, just it was impressive, and we're so glad to have you here today to talk about all this stuff. And my question is, do you ever get tired of telling that story?
I can't say I look forward to it, but once I start telling it, it's all true. Is at least as true as I can make it. And because as G.K. Chesterton, the British writer, says, the past is not what it once was. And Ted Owenby, who's since retired, but was the head of Southern Studies at Ole Miss, used to say, origin stories are always disputed. So if you get Paul on here, his version will be a little different inevitably, but not in a hugely meaningful way, but everybody's got their own sense. But it's a good story. And I wrote a piece in my e-news last week, just as I don't know, struggled to get my leadership footing in the current state of the nation. How do I lead effectively in an organization, in the surroundings that I'm dealing with? One of the things that I was reflecting on and reminded by, and it goes against kind of popular wisdom, but is that real change doesn't come from brilliant leaders. It comes from, I don't mean the leaders are relevant, but it mostly comes from ordinary, what people perceive as ordinary people. And that later the leader gets the credit, but it's mostly from the ground up, and that a lot of people tend to dismiss their own ability to make a difference because they believe it's got to come from some brilliant, whatever, Emmy award-winning, Nobel Prize, superstar, 7-time NBA champion, WNBA Rookie of the Year, whatever. But it doesn't. It comes from you and from me and whatever. And so, I get it that half century later, like, it looks like we were these great geniuses. But I mean, really, I'm not discrediting our work, but we're just two people that did something that anybody could do. And I don't mean it's easy. It's not. And I don't mean it was overnight. It wasn't. And I don't mean we didn't screw up 80 million times en route. We have, including right now while I'm sitting here, there's 23 things going wrong. But the point is, like, if you believe in yourself and you're, willing to do the work, and you have the book with the essay on natural laws of business, like, those are just like gravity. They're true for all healthy organizations. And I don't care if people use those words the way I wrote them, but the point is the same. You need a vision, you need compelling products, you need to make the money work, you need to give great service to your staff, et cetera. And that's really what we did.
I
It's
think
not
a
a
lot
secret.
of times people talk a lot about the word culture is brought up a lot. We talk about it a lot. And I think at one point, you pointed out one of your the servers there in the room. You were like, "Look, you tell him your story," and
Yeah.
he was talking about his experiences there, and it said so much about your culture and all the things that you just mentioned. That is the culture. Like you can't
Yeah.
manufacture it. You can't artificially do it. It's something
No.
that is organic and happens, but it happens from that leadership component, and it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be from the top down. It's just, do you have a purpose? Like you talked about your vision and vision statement, all these different things. There's so much that goes into that, but when you
Yeah.
have those core elements, everything blossoms around it. There's ownership.
Yeah. No, totally agree. I mean, metaphorically, I look at the culture like the soil of your farm or your garden. Uh, the leader is the farmer. So it's not like it just spontaneously becomes good. I think the point is that we have a role to play, an important piece of the puzzle. But my point is just that people have been trained to think, that there's these brilliant heroes that are going to save them, or that if they're not a hero, they can't do the work. And I just don't buy it. And I think, to your point about asking Nathan, who was the server that night, the question, it's just part of what we've tried to do, and it's in the culture and also in our systems, is to treat everybody like a leader from the time they get here and teach them how to run a business from day one. And a lot of them aren't here for that, and not all of them take in the lessons at the same level. And some of them don't hear it for 2 years, and then something clicks and they get going. But the point is, not to do the typical model, which is to treat the employees like interchangeable machine parts that are irrelevant to some brilliant back office strategic planning, and instead to treat them like smart people who have perspectives that diversity dictates I can't have as the person who started the company, and so it creates the culture because it's teaching people to think instead of to shut up. It's teaching people to be creative instead of to wait for somebody else to be creative. And, that creates problems by autocratic standards because they don't agree with you all the time. But that's what we want in the culture.
Ari, all of these are just pearls of wisdom. And I'm so excited that you're here to kind of talk through it because, as Michael mentioned, I did buy all the books. I've been rolling through them. I love what you write and how you write because it's all these valuable business insights, but not written by a boring business guy. So just starting with your chapbook, it's like 18 life lessons with your time on the line. What's the one lesson you keep finding yourself returning to most often, even now?
The number one lesson is to stop looking for the number one thing.
Okay.
because
I'll take it.
Because it's a manifestation of how we're all unconsciously trained to think hierarchically.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean you don't have to pick one thing to work on today, but it doesn't mean it's actually the most important. It's just the one you're working on and you want to give it your full attention. The reality is, and I'm not saying this to be overwhelming or difficult, it's just everything matters, and so people are trained to focus on the one thing, and then the one thing doesn't fix everything, and then they abandon it and go for another one thing, and that don't fix, which is sort of like the 7-week diet, or the workout routine that's going to make them healthy and happy, and then they try it for 3 days, then they can't get to the gym, whatever. It's a bad cycle. So this is really, like if you're the farmer, if you go back to that metaphor, like you can't go, well, I'm just going to work on watering for the first 2 years, and then later we'll come back and work on seed selection, and then we'll do that for a year. And then, it doesn't work. Like you got to have sun, you got to have water, you got to have mulch, you got to have nutrients for the soil, you got to, till whatever you're going to do, and prune and weed and all those things. So it is figuring out how to do a lot of things at once. And I understand that can be overwhelming. And so it absolutely makes sense to pick one or two, but also not to fall into the trap of believing that one or two is the answer.
No, I love that.
I have a question real quick, just in more of a personal side, because Jack and I were heading somewhere last night, and I had a slight meltdown. We've been doing this for almost 25 years. I think I'm pretty good at what I do. We're pretty good. Our agency's somewhat successful, really surpassed our expectations. But there's moments where I was like, we had a problem with a client. It was a new marketing director, and they didn't like something.
We all
and
have those moments, dude.
Well, I was just like doubting. I was like, okay, maybe I'm just not good anymore. I can't do this anymore, whatever. And I'm over it. It was a moment. But as a creative, it happens to me every once in a while where, I get too involved into it. But from your perspective, you are very successful. You have many businesses, you have many employees, you have many growth things. At what point did you feel like, okay, I have all this together? And are there those same doubts that creep into your head? Like, what the hell am I doing? This is a train wreck. It's not going to.
I don't feel successful. I just feel like somebody, like I wrote in the chapbook, I just feel like a line cook that's doing pretty well. Success is a socially imposed concept. It doesn't really exist. Like there's nothing in nature that's a success. It's people getting together to define what success means and then arguing over what success means. And when we're going by other people's standards of success, which are usually on particular metrics, not on a quality of life that only you can know, it doesn't work that great, So I don't mean we're doing a bad job. I just mean like they don't go, this forest is a success, forest of the year, it's done, retire. Like you keep going, and every 5 seconds there's something else going on. So that's the answer on that. Do I feel those things? Yeah, everybody does. Like I people often will, say like, I don't know, I have a really bad imposter syndrome. I'm like, I have never met anybody yet that doesn't have imposter syndrome. And I get it that, statistically or culturally, it may be more commonly talked about among women, but I've never met a guy who doesn't have it either. And, the ones who don't admit that they have it probably have it worse.
Yeah, doing a good job. I like how you said that, though. I think success is on a humanity level, on a core level, it's survival. That you judge success by surviving. Like I've survived this and I moved to the next thing. And that is I think is a way to measure your success. Like you're still here, you're still standing.
Yeah. Well, everybody gets to have their own is the point. And, one person's like by corporate, Wall Street standards, we're not doing anything. I mean, we could have gone public. We could be going national, by the standards of my peer group who sold their businesses and have a lot more money than I do. And, have 3 boats. I'm not doing anything, I'm not saying they're good or bad. I'm just saying it's, and then by contrast, like somebody who has 4 kids and chooses to stay at home and raise the kids, like not staying at home would make them a failure, so there's no rights or wrongs. I mean, and I think that's, whether you get it, like I do from studying anarchism or just from trying to be yourself or whatever. I mean, that's really the challenge of life is to figure out what works for you. And, I like work and I'm not trying to work less. I'm not trying to retire. I'm trying to, I got a lot to do, but that doesn't mean other people shouldn't have different goals than me.
Right. So speaking of always working to improve what you're doing and not focus on this numerical list of things, you mentioned a couple of times when we were with you up in Ann Arbor about the salt. Will you talk about your thoughts around salt for our listeners?
Salt in the food?
Yes, please. Yes.
Yeah, I wrote an essay once called Salt Makes Sense, S-E-N. That means C-E-N-T-S. But it also makes sense in the other way too. So this is really the inverse of what you were asking. Instead of the most important thing, it's looking at the thing that gets almost no attention, yet can completely alter the guest experience and your finances and your future. So, and this is a food business story, but the truth is there's going to be corollaries, I'm sure, that anybody listening can figure out for their own industry. I would imagine in marketing, a missing letter can completely spin the meaning of the ad completely in the wrong direction. So, the salt levels in food are super important. And, if you're serving food that's not particularly good or people have low expectations, I guess it's probably less relevant. But we have high expectations of ourselves and our guests appropriately have high expectations of us. And so from tasting, even though I grew up on Mrs. Paul's fish sticks, I've learned a fair bit. And, a tiny amount too little salt and the food tastes tasteless. Too much salt and it's unpleasant to eat. And so the truth is, like, the recipe could be great, but the person doing the salting didn't really test. And the truth is, depending on like a different brand of beans could cook, differently, like you change the chili pepper and it was a little salty, like anything can make a difference. And so you constantly have to taste. And then also if something, in the food world, like you might hold a dish hot, it reduces, so the salt might have been fine at 9 a.m. when it went in, but by 1 o'clock, it's already too salty or, whatever. So going through and being diligent about constantly tasting for salt and correcting things makes a huge difference. And I think I shared with you the story, which I'll never forget. And the guy actually showed up for dinner like I don't know, a couple months ago. I don't really know him, but he goes, do you remember that story? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, I was that guy. So it's about 15 years ago. And these young guys had come in, I think it was for one of the Jewish holidays. And so they had ordered soup, chicken soup, and the server, comes back to, the expediting line, which is the sort of center of the restaurant where everything emanates from, to go out in the dining room. And he's like, table 105, man, they say the soup is tasteless and it's terrible, and he brings it back. And I'm like, I know it's not tasteless and I know it's not terrible, but I'm going to tell you right now, it doesn't have enough salt. And so I go taste, and sure enough, it doesn't have enough salt. So we fix the salt level, bring the same broth, not the one he had in his bowl, but from the same batch, a new bowl of it to him with the right salt level. And then he loved it, And so, I mean, literally, like, the actual cost, 2 cents, maybe. Had we not fixed it, his, message for the rest of his life would be, these guys are overrated and they have terrible food, which then, from your wearing your marketing hat, is bad word of mouth, which Lord knows how many people he's going to talk to. And, this is before social media was such a big thing. But, today, if the person's in a bad mood and they're aggro, they post it all over the place for, to make you look bad. Or we get the salt right and they have this marvelous meal. Now, in this case, Michael mentioned service stuff. So through good service recovery, we were able to get it back on track. And then through good culinary skill, recognize quickly what the problem was and fix it quickly. But sure would have been a whole lot better if we had done a better job at tasting the salt on the line and catching it before it went out. So the point to your question, Jackie, is just, these tiny, tiny things can have an enormous impact. And, that story doesn't get into headlines. And, there's no like, line cook tastes salt 382 days in a row, new record set. like that's not going to be the headline. It's only when the business goes under later, that's what gets in the headlines. But the truth is, or when you win an award, that's what gets in the headlines. But the truth is, it was made up mostly of thousands of little things like tasting or not tasting the salt.
Right.
Yeah, I talked about it when we were up there. I don't know if you ever got a chance to watch the Bear series that's been on.
I'm sure I've had a chance, but I've never done it.
It's about a restaurant and all that stuff. So
yeah, I know the story,
but it's an insane show. But and every season's different. But there's this one episode I talked about it then and I wrote a blog about it. It's about the spoon. The episode is called The Spoon, and the whole thing is in this nice restaurant, and this guy's sent there to polish spoons the whole time, and he thinks he's being punished, and he's complaining about it, and then finally the maitre d' is like, "You don't get it, like this." Like that one thing can change the entire night for somebody, because it was a fine dining restaurant, and it was that one moment. And it was like, at that moment, it clued it in for him. He's like, oh, it's like every night for us is the Super Bowl. Every night it has to be perfect. And then they had a line meeting with the staff, and the sous chef walks out and he holds up the spoon. And he goes, "Let's talk about the smudge on the spoon." And it was the biggest deal, because that's how, whatever. And he was like, "It's just a smudge. What does it matter?" He's like, "It matters, because that's our expectations that we have for ourselves and for our customers."
Yeah. And everything matters. And, two corollaries. I mean, one is just, when the server's job in a restaurant, not a restaurant like ours, is to make sure, that the table is, what in quotes, marked. So there needs to be silverware down or whatever. But all systems are best when there's more than one person who, so yes, they're responsible. And there's a second person who's also supposed to check it, so that if the first one misses, there's another person who's going to back it up, right? So the person who delivers the food is supposed to check for the spoon or the fork or whatever, because it could have been cleared in the first round of food and not replaced, or they ordered soup and there wasn't a spoon on the table. So, the whatever inexperienced food runner won't notice. So they leave the table and you got your soup, but you got no spoon, right? So if it's chili and it's really thick, you could probably fake it with your fork. But if it's that chicken soup, what are you going to do? So like for them, it seems like no big deal. It's just a spoon. And to your point, I'm like, no. Let's say they come from a super polite family, not like mine, but they're out there, and no one's going to touch a piece of food till everybody's ready to eat. And Cousin George can't eat his soup because he doesn't have a spoon. And the server is trapped at another table where somebody's from out of town and they're asking 63 questions about it's a big menu and they want to know everything that's on there and the server can't get back there. Meanwhile, the food's getting cold. So now finally they get the spoon and they start eating, but it's been 4 minutes. So the food's already not hot. And then one of them's like, this place is terrible. What are you kidding me? This much money and the food, they can't even get hot food to the table. And the next one's in a bad mood because their boss took some out on them. And they're like, yeah, I heard. And pretty soon the whole thing's going downhill. And I'm telling you, it all came because we didn't notice that they didn't have a spoon. And then just a non-food story. I mean, I always remember reading John Wooden, the basketball coach at UCLA, had, all these great leadership tips. And one of them was the story of how when players came in, they started the season's preseason getting ready by teaching them how to put their socks on. And, so this is UCLA back in the day, and they were like the height of the height, top team college basketball men's in the country. And they're getting all these super high recruits. And these guys are like, what are you kidding me? You're going to show, I came all the way here to play NCAA championship basketball. And now you want to show me how to put a stupid sock on? Like I'm 17 or 18 years old. I know how to put a sock on. How do you think I got here? And he's like, no, let me tell you, if you put the sock on slightly wrong, it's going to rub. And if it rubs for a while, you're going to start to get a blister. And then when you start to get a blister, you're going to start to compensate and you're going to run a little funny. And then when you run a little funny, the odds of getting an injury go up. And when the odds of injury go up and you have an injury, we could lose you for the entire season, 2 games in, just because your socks weren't on right. And it's true.
Little things matter. Every little thing matters. Michael commented on you kind of being a rock star amongst the other 21 Hats attendees. And I attribute that to your appearance in Bo's book, Small Giants.
I thought you were going to say just to my appearance.
I'm sure it was that too. Your general aura and charismatic impression. But how much of an impact did that book have on the business, on the growth, on you all seeing yourselves maybe differently than you did before, on other people seeing you a certain way, on your mom finally stop asking you to become a lawyer? Like, how did that book impact you in your business?
It might have helped on my mom.
Okay.
I don't think it really everything impacts like we've been saying, but it wasn't like this giant career switch for us. Every little piece of press helps. The stories that get written about press make it sound like you get one article and then 80 million orders came in. And it's like that happens once every 5 years, but mostly it's just 10 more people here and 5 more people there and 20 more there. That said, we had already known Bo because he came and wrote about us for Inc. magazine. So it was part of an ongoing relationship. I think for him, it was a big aha because, he was able in a really wonderful way that he's so good at to piece together these trends or patterns that other people were missing, to see what these kind of businesses were like. And then, and back to Michael's question about comment about success, like he presented that and it gave business people a different sense of what success could mean.
Right.
For us, it was already what we were doing. So it was nice to have the affirmation. And it was cool to read about the other people, some of whom I knew and a lot I didn't. And then later, after the book came out, we ended up co-teaching a seminar at Zingerman about visioning with Bo as part of it for, 5-6 years. I forgot how long it went. But anyway, so it definitely helped. I think it helps out in the world, for people who are not in tune with our end of the business world, who didn't study anarchism and who are mostly reading business articles that tell them about, George Jones or, Gina this and, West Texas, who, out of her garage started a $80 billion business. And,
right.
And they're great stories and I'm sure they're true, but there's a lot of ups and downs in Gina's life before she hit the $80 billion that they're not telling you. And there's a lot more people who didn't make that story work that tried, and they're good people too. They just didn't, get the $80 billion. So I think for the rest of the world, it was cool for them to see that like you could have success and really live a life that was more aligned with what you wanted, not just pursue the Wall Street, dance.
For the people who may not know about Bo's book, can you talk a little bit about Small Giants
Yeah.
and
So
how that kind of goes against the norm?
So he wrote an article about us. I forget what year it was, about 25 years ago, that was on the cover of Inc. magazine, which they put the title on it, coolest small company in America. So it was just, it was about what we do. And as we've sort of alluded a couple times already in our conversation, like what we do is always driven by writing a vision. And we opened in '82. We didn't know you could write a vision, but we had one in our heads. It's in the pamphlet Story of Visioning at Zingerman's, which you probably have in that big stack you bought.
I do.
And it tells the story of so 11 years in, so 1993, we had grown to be whatever, 100 and some employees. We were doing, I don't know, 4 or 5 million in sales. We'd added on physically to the building twice. So, in the context of success, we were there, like, right. You started with 2 employees, you got all this going on. My mother was still asking me about law school, but other than that, we were doing our, by the world standards, doing quite well. But one morning, I don't know, about 10 o'clock, Paul grabbed me in a summer day, nice day, sat me down on the bench in front of the deli, and he kind of looks at me and he's like, okay, in 10 years, what are we doing? I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, in 10 years, what are we doing? I'm like, I have no idea what we're doing. He goes, well, we kind of had this vision that we only want to open one place and we're not going to open outside Ann Arbor. And, because of that, we've already turned down offers from other cities, and other people are opening on campus because we won't open more spots and it's not as good, but it's eating into our market. Like, what are we doing in 10 years? And I'm like, Paul, man, I got work to do. And he's like, no, this is our work. So in hindsight, what he was asking me is, what's your vision? In hindsight, I don't think he had a new vision. I know I didn't. It's not like we were satisfied, because from day one, we've been about always getting better and continuous improvement long before there was a Toyota Way book. But there's a big difference I've come to understand between improving what you have, which is good, and going after a vision of greatness of the future that's really challenges you and that's inspiring. And you need to do the improvement to get to the vision. It's pretty much inevitable, but just improving one little bit at a time without clarity of where you're going and why you're going there is not a good recipe for success. So Paul's question prompted a year of long walks, lots of frustration, eye rolls, curse words, and continually coming back to the table till we figure it out, which is still how we work here today now systemically, which is you just keep talking about it till you get to agreement. And during that early months of that conversation, we got to know a guy named Stash Kazmierski, who was a consultant at the time for a company called Dana Miller Tyson. And Kathy Dana Miller was known at that time, so this was the early 90s, all over the U.S. for her progressive organizational change methodologies. And they had their office like a block from the deli. And I don't have an office, but everybody who has one always wants to get out of the office. And so understandably, on a nice day, they would all walk down to the deli to hold meetings or, use it as an excuse to grab a cup of coffee or whatever. And Stash was down there regularly. And I don't know if it was me or Paul, but one of us started sort of lamenting that we were facing this challenge of where we would be and what we were going to do. And then he shared this visioning process with us that he had learned from a guy named Ron Lippitt at University of Michigan 15 years earlier, which was Ron Lippitt called it preferred futuring. He was a key element of the Institute of Social Research here at the university. And he really did this work around how communities can imagine a collectively positive future for themselves. And Stash and others had been taught it by Ron. And then we learned it from Stash. We sort of adapted it to more business setting and called it visioning. And so out of that, we wrote our first vision, which was called Zingerman's 2009. So you'll see we went 15 years in the future, not 10. And that vision was about 6 pages long. It's in the back of that green pamphlet. And it described that the answer to Paul's question, in 15 years, not 10, we would have created a community of businesses, all located here in the Ann Arbor area. Got a strong belief about doing business where you live. It was always meant to be a community of business. So not me and Paul investing in separate entities, but rather operating as one organization with semi-autonomous pieces, where we could use the vision to improve the food and improve the service, because each business would have its own specialty. So like you could have a bakery that really made world-class bread, not a deli that added a bakery department that the manager changed every 6 months. This would be somebody who had a passion for what that new business did, and that we would use that to create opportunity for people in the organization because they could become partners like we were, and that it would create synergy across the organization. So when the bakehouse started, every sandwich got better. When Zing Train started, all the training got better. When Miss Kim started, we became more effectively diverse. When the Roadhouse started, the bakehouse got a good customer. So the point is everybody's helping everybody else. Long story short, that's what Bo wrote about in that article in Inc. And then Small Giants emerged from that because it was sort of this theme of like businesses like ours that had defined success in ways that were not the norm. We weren't trying to be the biggest. We weren't trying to be the, Taco Bell of corned beef. We weren't trying to flip the company and make a lot of money. We had described success in our terms in a different way. And so the whole book, Small Giants, came from sort of seemingly similar stories from other businesses.
Which is awesome. I think everything about it, I think your commitment to Ann Arbor, your willingness to turn down airports and Vegas and all these other options and sticking to your vision is part of what has made it so successful. We kind of half jokingly referenced your mom and your role as a future attorney. Will you please tell that story? Because I think that's awesome.
Yes, and Lauren Feldman from 21 Hats used it as the headline. It's a good thing she's not on the planet anymore. So yeah, in my family, success did not include business as an option. And so, when I started washing dishes, I understand my mother wasn't that enamored of my choice after 4 years of out-of-state tuition at Michigan. It didn't seem like a great career path. Then I was cooking, still not very good, managing kitchens, still not very good. Then we opened a business, which if you're from a business family, or today when business is far more glamorously perceived than it was in 1982, that would probably get you into the success category column. But in my family, opening a deli was more akin to decades of, slavery in a business that you were trapped in, doing drudgerous work all the time was sort of the perception. And so, even though I really loved what I was doing, she would always go like, it just feels so bad that you're wasting your education and, da, da, da. And anyway, the joke of the law school is like every summer, I think for like 10 or 12 years after we opened, she would say, why don't you just take the LSAT and you don't have to go to law school, but then if you decide you want to go, you'll be ready. And I was like, I don't think this year, Mom, maybe next year, And then I don't know what exactly we were 10, 11 years in. It was probably around the time we wrote that vision. And, I don't know. I was going to therapy and I was and I'm like, why don't I just tell her the truth? Like, what am I hiding, Which just shows you that no matter how much you've attained, it's still difficult to stand up to your parents who we get along, we ended up getting along fine, but it's not like we had this super tight relationship. So I wouldn't have told her one way or the other. But anyway, we're about 11, 12 years in and she goes, why don't you just take the LSAT? I'm like, Mom, we have 150 employees. We're doing $5 million in sales. I like what I'm doing. I am not taking the LSAT. Stop asking me. But, it's funny, but it's just like the amount of work it took to be able to just say that, not in a mean way, but in a grounded, truthful way, is a good reflection on self-management,
Right.
and a lesson that even the successful entrepreneur, it's still hard to not please your mother.
Well, my
Michael's dad
family
thinks he draws cartoons.
Yeah, exactly. They're from a very Italian-American business family. They all own businesses. That's what they do. They are business people. And to this day, luckily I married Jackie and we started the agency, and he talks to her more about it than me because he can relate to what running a business is.
Yeah.
But me is like, Mike does the art thing. What is he going to do? He paints or he draws. He actually is making a living for a long time. How are you going to make a living doing that? I think still has trouble processing that information.
Yeah. Well, this is what's called empathy and honoring people's, it's back to letting people find their own way in the world and not imposing what we want. And, it's easy to say that, but people, we all can fall into creating visions for others of what we believe their life should be, especially when it's one of your relatives. And, that doesn't really honor that their vision may not be the same as your
Sure.
vision. And I'll just say it's a vote for writing personal visions, because in permaculture, like agroforestry, there's a saying like that nature abhors a vacuum. So in nature, if you have an empty field with nothing on it, like something's going to grow, and it's often the weeds that you didn't want. Whereas if you plant a lot of healthy plants, it actually diminishes the odds of the weeds growing. So when we have no clear vision that we can share with people, they're going to fill in the blank for us. Like, Mike, man, you could do that art on the weekend. Like, come on, let's open this business. You're gonna love it.
Yeah.
No, I just want to draw or whatever. I want to paint. I want to make ads, whatever. And they're like, come on, man, that's not a real life. Like that's like a hobby, but we're just imposing our own, and I can do it too. I mean, we're just imposing our own judgment of what success is on other people.
I like the way you said that, though. Like, if you don't have that vision, you leave openings for not just other people to creep in, but your own space. Like, if you don't fill it, you're going to fill it with other things, and that's not always good.
Yeah, well, they have. I choose to believe, having written this big book on beliefs, that their intentions are good. They're not trying to make our lives difficult, but if there's no picture of the future that you're going for, they have one. They're convinced it's a good one. Why would they not tell you what it is? And so when we put our own out there, it can be awkward. It takes courage. They may not like it, but at least they know what it is.
What I love about all this, I think, is not just that it's worked out so well for you. I mean, that part I love. But like so many of us, you're an accidental entrepreneur. You didn't go to business school and get your MBA and follow the path and do all the right things. You figured it out as you go along. You've built this plane mid-flight. And I think there's a lesson in that for everyone.
Yes, we're all figuring it out. And it's only that we've been given the illusion that everybody else has it figured out. But I've learned they don't. Like, they're all just trying to figure it out too. I don't care who it is. Like, if it's your favorite musician, they're going, well, I don't know what to do about the next album. Can we really follow this one? I'm so anxious. Do I make the song? Should I make, I don't know, man. It was good with the 7-minute version, but that's probably too long for this, and and then it comes out, and then they get a nice review, and now they're success again, But I mean, whoever it is, like, they're all struggling. I mean, that's my belief, is they're all struggling. And that when you embrace that everybody's kind of struggling, and everybody has self-doubt, and everybody has uncertainty, it's a lot of, I would say, unhelpful beliefs that are circulated. I wrote a lot about it in the pamphlet I did on humility. And one of them is the belief that leaders shouldn't be afraid. And it's like, no, we're all afraid. Like, I'm afraid of everything. I'm afraid to come on this podcast. I just taught myself to go ahead anyway. And that's really the big difference, is not banishing fear. Like, it's part of who you are. It's a normal human emotion. Like, I don't think you can exist without it. But instead of hiding the fear, which is going to come back to haunt you, you can learn. I have tried to learn to just honor it, admit it. There's no shame in it, and then go ahead.
Right. You've referenced pamphlet a couple of times. I think it's an accurate description, because they are kind of pocket-sized.
Yeah.
As a reader, as voracious as you are, and a writer as prolific as you are, how hard is it to edit yourself down to pamphlet size, when I think most writers want to write and write the great American novel?
Well, it's yes. Well, I have Jenny Tubbs, who runs Zingerman's Press, does a good job, and I think, work well together. And to state the obvious, just like you and Michael, I'm sure you don't agree on everything, and I'm sure you have tense moments, and we have the same, but it's all out of good intentions. And, so there is the challenge. There's different pieces that come into play, like, as probably what you try to teach your clients, like, what's your voice, right? So You get it, I think. I mean, I do this weekly e-news. I was up working on it early this morning, and it's long, and so there's going to be people that's, say like, it's too long. I'm like, well, it's too long for somebody who wants one more, 3 headline, four sentence e-news that they can read in 90 seconds while they're walking down the hall. But that's not what I want, And so in the same way that there's people who don't want to buy our sandwich because it's expensive, that's okay.
Yeah.
It's not for everybody. And I think that if we had made our food for what most people wanted, we wouldn't be here, And so I understand that it's too long for a lot of people, but that's the point. And I don't write it just to be long. I write it because I have a lot to say, and I do edit it down from like half of what I had to get it to that size.
That's
but
the thing is, I'm impressed at how well you edit it. Michael and I wrote a book.
Well, I don't do it alone. There's
Right.
other people that edit with me. I mean, you can't do it. And that, like when you get it on Wednesday, it's been through like 5, edits and 5 proofs.
Right. But as I've read through, almost all of the books that we bought and the pamphlets and everything, I keep going back to when Michael and I wrote this, which is 140 pages. He was really worried because it wasn't big like other advertising books. It wasn't.
You could have just put a lot of blank pages in and filled it up.
Exactly, like some note places in the back.
Who's that?
This is Michael Johnson's branding in 5.5 steps.
Uh-huh.
It's literally 500 pages. It's massive. It's hardbound. It's ridiculous. And so I don't think it's got to be a lot of pages and a lot of words to get the point across.
Well, it depends what your point is and what you're trying to do. I mean, so in essence, like I would, going back to what we said before, I would say, what's your vision for the book, right? So, the vision for the pamphlet's not the same as the vision for the book. I got this little chapbook that's like, I don't know, 4 inches by 4 inches, and it's 50 pages long or something. I mean, it's like a little espresso shot of learning, and then I got that beliefs book is like 600 pages and then everything in between. So it's just trying to figure out what's right for your message. Some people write haiku, some people write, 800-page novels. I mean, they're both okay. It's just being true to who you are and, meeting the vision that you have. And, I'm very big on not doing work that I don't really believe in.
Yep.
And, I can appreciate the haiku and it's cool. And I've tried to, I've been trying to learn more from poetry in recent years and, which is generally much shorter, and that's cool too. So it's another tool, I don't know, like I feel like I'm a musician that, I don't know, whatever, played guitar, but I'm trying to learn mandolin, so like it's,
right.
It's not going to be my main instrument, but I'm learning from trying something else.
Yeah, I do have a question. I know we're getting close on time, and this is probably not something you can even answer because it's a whole nother tackle thing. But according to Britannica and Copilot, anarchism is a political and philosophical belief that all forms of involuntary rule or government are unnecessarily undesirable, unethical, and the society would function better without a ruler. Now, that's a quick description of that topic.
Yeah, I believe I'm pretty. Here's how weird I am. Is I'm pretty sure that Britannica description, unless they've changed it, was written by Prince Peter Kropotkin, the Russian prince who became an anarchist and gave up his noble title 150 years ago.
And I'm sure there's so much more in that package. But like in general, I just wanted to ask, like running a business over the years, have you run into conflict with that core belief of system of because I understand what's behind that. I mean, like I said, that doesn't do a good job, I think, of summarizing that. But it's like that we're not going to all follow the leader, basically, that there is form in the madness.
Well, let me give you some takes on it. So
please.
Obviously, all things you could define, like what's good marketing, like there's a million definitions. Mm-hmm. So it's the same for anarchism, and anarchism would be the last thing that would make sense for somebody to impose a singular definition on. Some of the things that have helped me enormously are, I was reading the work of Gustav Landauer, who was a German Jewish pacifist anarchist who was kicked to death in 1919 by the German army in I mean, a sort of century earlier facsimile of January 6th, which actually worked because they overthrew the government and overthrew the democratic construct post-World War One. But anyway, I couldn't read his work when I was in school because it was only in German, but in the intervening years, it got translated into English so I could read it. And I learned a lot from him. And one of the many things that he wrote that I was like, wow, that totally makes sense, is he said, we have no political beliefs. We have beliefs against politics. Now, to be clear, I really hope everybody listening votes and takes part, participates in helping to run the ecosystem of which we're a part. However, anarchism is the antithesis of politics. It's not campaigning for votes to take charge. It's a way of life. And so it's about how you treat yourself and how you treat every other human being and really the planet all day long, every day. It's not about taking power. It's about using the power that you already have to create positive things every 5 seconds. And so that's really what it is. And I mean, in a nutshell for me, and I'm not saying my answer is right. Yes, a lot of it was opposed to government, but that's not my thing. I don't feel, I don't know how you could run a country without a government. It's just way too big. But I do think that business and smaller organizations are actually a perfect ecosystem or an ideal ecosystem in which to try to apply it. Anarchism is not opposed to leadership. It's just opposed to hierarchical leadership that's imposed through outside authority. So there's always a need for leadership. It's just that the leader earns the respect of the people who are choosing to do what needs to be done. And that it's not about chaos, it's about order. It's just about involving the people in the organization and creating the systems that make the order, not just you and me going in the back room and coming back and going, okay, everybody, this is how you're going to do it. It's asking people's input and using diverse perspectives to create an outcome. And, here it's another real two other really big beliefs that have helped me a lot. And then I'll shut up on this and I could go on it for a long time. But so one is to learn to not think hierarchically. This is sort of what I was hopefully nicely teasing Jaci about, the one thing. But we've all been trained to think hierarchically in the US. I mean, almost everybody. And it's so endemic that we don't even know we're doing it. So it's like that, joke story of the two fish swimming along, talking about another fish who's not there. And then that one fish says to the other one, yeah, man, he's like a fish out of water. And the other fish goes, what's water? Right. So I just wrote about this last week in the e-news, but it's just, everything is the top 5 tips, the most important thing, the worst mistake you ever made, your biggest success, the number one, the top of this, the best. And it's all this implication that there is a best. And I grew up in Chicago, I like Michael Jordan, but does it really matter whether he's better or LeBron James is better? It's irrelevant. And I'm not down on, sports. They play to win a title and more power to them, but it doesn't make him a better person than the ball boy. And I think that's really the point, is that the ball boy deserves as much respect, in the WNBA, I don't know if they got ball boys or ball girls, but the kid that's bringing the ball out onto the court deserves as much respect as the superstar. And it doesn't mean I don't respect the superstar. It just means I respect the person bringing the ball on. The other really big one is the understanding that what anarchism would say is the means that we use. So how we go about doing something must be aligned or congruous with the ends that we're trying to achieve. Okay, so what does that mean in practice? It means that when the boss is yelling at the employees for giving bad service, that don't work.
I love
And
that.
so it means that we can't be cruel to create kindness. It's impossible. We can't beat people up in the belief that's how we're going to make a better society. It doesn't work. We can't exclude people to create inclusion. It doesn't work. So how I treat the cashier at the drugstore on the way home last night at 9:45 when I'm dealing with some nerve pain in my ankle, and it hurts like heck. And I really want to get going, and I want to get home, and it's taking a long time. But how I treat that cashier is integral to the future of the United States. That's how I look at it. And that it's, yeah, of course, who's in charge matters, but that doesn't remove the burden from me. And I don't need permission to be kind. I don't need a license to use dignity. I don't need a government grant or, somebody else to do it first. I can just, take 10 seconds to ask the guy behind the counter, like, how's your day going?
That is such a great, I love that. I'm so glad you talked about that because I'm going to have to go read more about that because it's not what I thought. And I think the Sex Pistols and punk rock movement stole that word, and everybody has a certain perception of what that means. Well,
I like the Sex Pistols too.
I do too.
I have those albums and I like the Clash, but there's more to it than just that. And Johnny Rotten, John Lydon said later, he just picked anarchy because it rhymed with something else.
Sounded good. Yeah.
UK. Yeah. And so, I mean, more power to him. It's awesome. But it's a life philosophy, and it's really about a positive belief in people and about treating everybody with dignity, whether you like them or not. And it's really about treating yourself with dignity. And a lot of what appealed to me about it was that it's small giants. I mean, it's encouraging people to be themselves, not to fall into social constructs. Rollo May, the 20th century psychologist, said the opposite of courage is not cowardice, it's conformity. And there's enormous pressure on all of us, me included, to conform, like just to not go to law school. Like in my family was, it's stupid, but it was hard. And in my own little goofy world, right? And so anarchism is a positive belief in people. It's just choosing to believe that everybody cares, everybody's smart, that when people are doing things I don't like, it's not because they're trying to mess me up. They got some bad information. They got some wounds from their childhood. They got a lot of stuff going on. It doesn't mean I got to just let it go and not speak my truth, but it means I got to treat them with dignity while I disagree with them, or else I'm going to end up with even worse than we got.
I think that's a great way to wrap this up, because it definitely, if I asked why you were successful or how you've gotten this far, those kind of belief systems, it's kind of evidentiary. If
a lot of hard work,
all that stuff. But if you don't have a good soul and you're not trying to do the right thing, and you're not selfless in your endeavors, and you're not trying to let other people join the party with you, then how far are you going to get?
Well, I mean, it depends on your judgment of success, because like when you read the news, there's people with gazillions more dollars than I'm ever going to see. And if that's the number one thing of success, and they've treated people really badly en route, then they're a success. But it's hard for me to believe that they have a great, fulfilling inner life. It's hard for me to believe that they have really great, deep friendships. It's hard for me to believe that their ecosystem around them is healthy and thriving, and with spiritually grounded people. And everybody gets to define success. So if their success is just how much money they got and how many people they rolled over on the way there, maybe they're doing it. But that's not my view of how I want to live.
We have to stop it there, because if there's any more awesome pearls of wisdom, people's heads will explode.
We can do another one in a while.
We'll have to do a part 2. Ari, I'm going to take you up on that, because this was awesome. Okay, tell the people how they find you. How do they connect with you on socials, buy the books, all the things?
Okay, well, Zingerman's businesses, we have all those social media things, but I barely go on there. So I'm not the one to tell you, but I can get you all those things. My email is ari@zingermans.com, which, as Maggie from Zing Train said, is my version of introvert social media. I'll talk to any of y'all, but one-on-one. So email away. My e-news, the easiest way is really just email me and I'll send it back to you, and then you can sign up. But it is on the Zingerman's community site. The books and pamphlets and the chapbook, we're kind of off the grid. I'm not a big Amazon fan. We're like farm to table for books. So we do all the design here. Jenny Tubbs, who I mentioned, does enormous amount of work. Ian Nagy does beautiful illustrations, and we print them here locally in Ann Arbor. And they're on the zingtrain.com site, where our leadership training is, where you had your meetings with 21 Hats. And then also zingermanspress.com, either one will have them. And zingermans.com is, of course, our food mail order, where we ship food to people in Texas and all over the country. And of course, hardly anybody knows, but we have this great little food tour business too, where if you want to go to Sicily or Spain or South Korea or any one of 15 different cities or countries, we go and take people to, eat like we would eat, and go into people's kitchens and watch them cook these meals that you won't find otherwise, and drink good wine and, small wineries that produce really a great artisan product.
I saw that in one of the most recent newsletters, and I meant to bring it up to Michael, because that seems like exactly a kind of trip we need to take.
Yeah, I think for your birthday, you've earned it.
Yes,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Absolutely.
Ari, this was a pleasure. You are a delight. Our eternal gratitude. Thank you.
Back at you. Let's talk more.
We will.
What am I to do when the day is through?